Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lisa, what did we hear?
That is the middle movement of a piece that I wrote, and that movement is called Merrygoround.
And where does Merry-Go-Round fit into 8th Blackbird and Lisa Kaplan?
That is an excellent question. Let's see. So I think part of what being in 8th Blackbird means is, we all really sort of support each other in our own musical endeavors. And for a concert a few years ago that we were doing here at the MCA, the composer and performer Nico Muley was going to join us for that concert. And Nico is also a pianist. And he asked me, he said, what are we going to play on this concert? We have to play something, piano four hands. And so we kind of went back and forth on it for a while. How about this piece? What about this piece? What do you think of this piece? And in the end, he finally just said, oh, Lisa, you just write something. And I said, really? He said, yeah, and make sure it's not too hard and that there's no contrasting slow section. So instead, I wrote a contrasting middle movement, which is what you just heard. But yeah, and it was, so we premiered the piece here, the whole piece. I played it together with Nico. But then what happened, which was very nice, is I think maybe it was Matthew's idea, but he thought, oh, you know, Lisa, your piece is really fun. And Yvonne, who's our violinist, and Nick, our cellist, both of them have, well, Yvonne actually has great piano skills. Matthew has fine skills, as you just saw. And Nick also has enough skill to play the piece in its entirety. So essentially, we added it to some of our 8th Blackbird programs, and played it throughout the year, which was really fun. So each of them sat in and played a movement with me. I guess the sort of, for me, playing piano four hands music, the reason to do it is that you kind of want to get into each other's business, because otherwise you might as well just be playing on two separate instruments. And I personally don't like playing four hands music unless it's with somebody that I really like, because you have to get in each other's business. So yeah, so the piece sort of became about that. And it's been great fun to play, and I feel very honored to that the group has sort of just supported my compositional endeavors, I suppose.
Matthew, that sounds to me as if perhaps the piece and the story behind it is an emblem, not the emblem, but an emblem of what 8th Blackbird is.
Yeah, me learning how to stay out of Lisa's way.
You learning how to stay out of Lisa's way. Are not hearing metaphor. Lisa's percussion skills, which are probably good, the piano being a
We've
percussion
done percussion
instrument.
duos before.
Have you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, she's game.
But the idea of being game and the
Yeah.
idea of working together and not having, obviously there are many goals and many ideas as you go from season to season, but there's not a single set of rules as to what you're going to do or even who is going to do them.
That's very accurate. It's the Wild West. Anything goes. And the 8th Blackbird is a very unique organization. The 6 members who are the musicians also came to be a democratic, singular artistic director. But 6 people have widely varying opinions and preferences and ideas. And so our meetings to determine the artistic direction of the ensemble are not smooth sailing. We have probably fascinating arguments. I don't know if that's the word we use for them internally. Spirited is a good one. But it leads to completely unexpected possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, maybe we can roll back a little bit and we can have a brief history of how you came together and the obligatory why the name.
Oh, sure.
And we should say there are 6, and 4 of you have been in it from the beginning.
Correct, yes. So there are 6 of us in the group. Matthew and I have been in it from the beginning. along with our cellist Nicholas Fotinos and our clarinetist Michael McAferry.
And that's 1996? Is that what we decided?
That's when we
That's what you
formed.
decided.
That's what we decided.
Well, we started playing together as undergraduates.
Right,
But
at
it's
Oberlin Conservatory.
Right.
Correct.
But so it's a little vague because we started out just playing in student ensembles together.
We were essentially put together at Oberlin by Timothy Weiss, who still is and had just joined the faculty at Oberlin at the time, the director of the contemporary music ensembles there. And Tim Weiss is, I don't know, he's probably 6 years older than me. So, when I was 17, he was very young, very talented, very enthusiastic about contemporary music. And at that time, now nearly 20 years ago, there was not that much enthusiasm within the musical academic culture for contemporary music. So it was definitely unique at Oberlin. And Tim just basically asked sort of the six of us if we wanted to be in a group together. And we said okay, and we rehearsed at very early in the morning, very late at night, and Tim actually conducted us for, I don't know, the first 8 or 10 months probably. And then we decided that we wanted to apply to some chamber music competitions in which you could not take a conductor with you. So we said, okay, well, let's see what happens. We'll send in our tapes and see if we even get picked, which we did. And then we said, okay, well, now we need to learn how to play without a conductor, essentially. And that was kind of the beginning. We went to that competition. We did well, and
In the wind division.
in the wind division
Yeah.
of the Fischoff Chamber Music Competition,
Yes.
which is
You all being wind players of
Right,
Well,
exactly.
century.
Right.
yes, they didn't know it
Well,
was.
it
was
just
strange.
speaks to the beginning of the next 20 years of people not knowing what to do with us.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. We had winds in the group. That's absolutely right. We also had strings. Anyway, we had, after coming back from that competition and having done well, we all sort of gathered at the roadside Oberlin diner and over coffee and biscuits and gravy decided, well, hey, this is going, well. None of us really have a plan other than, that maybe we want to go to grad school when we're done. So maybe we should, commit to doing this for another year. And that was kind of how it went for a while. We applied to a graduate program at the University of Cincinnati's Conservatory, which was actually to get an artist diploma in chamber music. The program doesn't exist anymore, and it was fairly new at the time. I think we were maybe only the second or third group to go
And then
through
you
it.
shut it down.
And then we shut it down, yeah.
And you
they were like-
applied, plural. You
Yes,
applied
correct.
as a group.
We
That's
applied
right.
as a group.
That's right.
And
So we all had
Did that
to stay
include
together.
like roommate preferences and dietary requirements, all the things that go
know.
on to an application?
There is too much information
Okay.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no.
So that is how we sort of ended up, moving to Cincinnati together, doing this essentially 3-year program, really learning how to play together as an ensemble. We did some more competitions. We did well. We ended up winning the Concert Artists Guild competition, which is an organization in New York that essentially provides 2 years of free management if you win the competition, and also a New York debut recital.
They pretend to host a competition, which they do, but what they really do is create a roster of young artists who are trying to transition into the professional world, and they mentor those ensembles for 2 or 3 years to make that transition, hopefully to professional management, but even just to be able to generate a booking schedule. It's very
I recommend
altruistic.
you visit their
organization.
website. Just type in Concert Artists Guild,
Yeah.
and they've been going for about 60 years. And Claire Chase and other people you may know of have been winners. And actually, this year WFMT streamed live the
Oh,
whole 12-hour day of
Oh, wow.
competition, and I believe that's all on their website. So
That's great.
you can find the 8th Blackbirds of tomorrow.
That's right.
So that happened.
So that happened, and we decided, at that, we were finishing up the program in Cincinnati. We kind of didn't know what to do next. And we discussed various, things like, well, we could move to New York. We could move to Chicago. We could get master's degrees. And
You were from all over.
We were from
no
all
two
over.
of you were from the same place.
That's true.
Correct.
That's true. We were really just brought together by the university study.
Right. So,
Okay, thanks.
so we decided that, we had just learned to play together as a group, well. If we moved to New York, we would have to kind of, all work other jobs in order to pay rent, to have a studio where we could rehearse. And, maybe that wasn't the best idea. And we thought, well, hey, maybe we should move to Chicago. We could see if we could get our master's degrees from Northwestern. And we would be near a major hub airport where we could sort of easily fly to different places to play concerts. And let's try and do that. So, that was kind of the extent of the conversation, and that's ultimately how we ended up in Chicago.
So we were just trying to figure out how to sustain ourselves. We needed room to rehearse. We needed a place where people weren't going to complain. But moving to Chicago was the best naive decision we ever made. We got so lucky coming here.
Let's roll back for a couple of points before we then enter the Chicago years.
Sure.
One, other than the wacky percussion person who always is interested in everything because otherwise he's never going to play, right?
Okay.
But did the other 5 folks come into Oberlin with the idea that they might be pursuing contemporary music as a career? And secondly, some people familiar with early 20th century, quote, classical music might know why these 6 instruments are considered an ensemble, but maybe you can explain that as well.
Sure. I'll take the second part first. For
10.
For 10 points. Yeah, well, our instrumentation is strings, winds, and percussion. It's violin, also doubling viola, and cello, and clarinets. Michael, our clarinetist, plays a range of clarinets and instruments in the clarinet family. And our flutist, Tim, plays a variety of flutes. I'm the percussionist, and that means a lot of things. I have a very large instrument inventory, and composers writing nowadays write for all kinds of things, being influenced by all kinds of music from different places and times. And Lisa is the pianist. So those are the 6 of us. The instrumentation became popularized, I think, as a result mostly of failing economies at the turn of the century in the 1900s, and orchestras in large-scale projects like massive Stravinsky ballets became prohibitive, and so organizations and composers like Stravinsky or Mahler or other significant composers, Arnold Schoenberg among them, started writing for smaller instrumentations, and they did often gravitate toward. Percussion had not really emerged yet as its own. It was still kind of embedded in the back of the orchestra and coloring sounds. So what the instrumentation that these composers started to gravitate toward was violin, cello, flute, clarinet, and piano. And so, like a mini orchestra, you had your wind section and your string section, and then sort of piano to fill things out. And Schoenberg wrote Pierrot Lunaire, and that was with a vocalist. And that ensemble became a fairly popular chamber ensemble for different reasons and applications. But then over time, the soprano, I don't know if it became unfashionable, I wouldn't say that, but for some reason, I guess writing instrumental music for the stage, composers started to include percussion. I guess as percussion started to stand more on its own feet in the 1950s and 60s in particular. And this instrumentation as a sextet became actually fairly standardized in as much as a non-piano trio or string quartet is a standardized ensemble. Right. And so at Oberlin, no, I think most students come in expecting a traditional conservatory training, and now this is 20 years ago, and things have changed enormously over 20 years, and in particular even within the last 10. And at that time, 20 years ago, people came to conservatory primarily for orchestral training. and that is fine. But Tim Weiss came into the institution and really turned the hierarchy of the ensembles upside down. It is traditionally the orchestra is the premier ensemble and sort of trickles down to chamber music and sort of niche or experimental avant-garde or new music sort of being sort of toward the bottom of everyone's concerns. And Tim took that model and he sort of single-handedly shanghaied the section leaders from the orchestra and said, you're going to be in the new music ensemble. And all of a sudden, the new music ensemble at Oberlin, this small ensemble became the ensemble comprised of the premier players. And then other students saw that and thought, I want to be part of that. And they were putting on, of course, the caliber of the performances just increased very impressively. And so students coming into Oberlin then were coming into an ensemble culture that was being cultivated really by Tim and the way he sort of reorganized things, his programming priorities.
And then as you have a scene that has a Blackbird and International Contemporary Ensemble, So Percussion, Third Coast Percussion, just thinking of groups that have started in the last 20 years.
Sure.
Then you have people saying, gosh, I want to do that rather than, and it doesn't mean that's what they'll do or that they may not do something even grander or in another direction, but you all were not going to say, I want to be an eighth Blackbird.
Right.
No, absolutely
No, we
not.
didn't know what that was.
We didn't
had
know
no
that was
idea.
an option.
Right.
And I'm glad. I think if we had, it's definitely one of those things that if you asked and someone told you it was too hard, then you wouldn't have tried. So we just were playing well together, and we were given an opportunity to do performances that were supported and well received as young students, and then we did a competition, and we applied. Another very important step for us is that we applied as students to a variety of summer chamber music festivals. And this was quite clever, actually, I think, that we applied as students, but summer festival presenters, every one of them struggles with their summer festival programming, where they bring all of these interesting people together. And it might be an orchestra festival, so they all play in the orchestra, but then they all do some sort of a chamber music presenting series. And it's very ad hoc, and things get thrown together, and players are asked to rehearse and throw things together. And we wrote to these festivals, and we said, we're students, we'd love to come and be part of your festival and play in your orchestra. Just so you know, if you bring us, we already have a repertoire of chamber music that we can play. So we could save you some trouble and fill out some of your programming. And it worked great. And in one summer we graduated over 3 different years, but I think maybe the summer before your last year, perhaps.
Yeah.
We ended up driving around the country with 2 cars and a trailer, mostly because of all the percussion inventory. And we were on the road for 8 weeks straight at 5 different music festivals, and everything lined up back to back. And we would finish a performance on a Saturday night at a festival and start driving, so we could check in for the next thing on the Sunday the next day. We had a great drive from Memphis through Nashville to Detroit.
Oh,
and we broke
the car
down.
broke down. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, that was how we named our first album. So you know how if you get a flat tire, you need the tool. Is it called a wheel lock? What is that called?
Oh, they're safety
See,
lugs, so the people can't steal your tires.
Right.
But then you have to have a round lug to get off around. We're
Right,
musicians,
but we didn't
so-
know, like we couldn't, we knew what we needed, but we didn't know what the name of that tool was.
So we couldn't get the tire
So no,
off,
but we just
but we
kept calling it the round nut tool. We need the round nut tool. And that was the name of our first album.
Yeah. But it became this metaphor for this struggle of trying to
Yes,
figure this
right,
thing out.
exactly, yeah.
We were precocious college students. We
might
yeah.
still be precocious.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I think that you are, and I think that that's also why this is such a wonderful fit with the idea of the humanities writ large, because as you can hear, and I didn't know initially which 2 of the folks who are going to be here. We're going to come to why everyone is either in or on their way to Virginia in just a moment, but or just a couple moments. But I assure you that in the history of the group, any two of these folks are tremendously articulate, open, warm, and they'd be the first to say that they've had good fortune on many levels. I mean, that this guy, this magician in some ways, came and put them together, that this happened, that happened, that they found the round tool nut or whatever, nut tool, and drank of it. But also, it's so important to recall that being open to chance and fortune and being prepared in what you do is a part of that general journey that all of us take. And in many ways, I think what a Humanities Festival does is it tries to recreate, or for those who didn't have it, create that exciting college feel where you're open to everything and you are smart, but you don't know what's going to happen, right?
You don't know.
You don't know. You never know.
It's really important to say yes all the time, even if it's really scary.
You came to Chicago. You've settled that that would be the place to park, the hub. And it's, I think, a compliment in some ways to Chicago that you indeed found what we Chicagoans like to think is a part of what makes our place work, and that is that we're fairly open, not too judgmental, and it's not that expensive
and
compared to
friendly
coasts.
and warm.
What?
And friendly and warm.
Yeah, well,
also.
I want
the
you
people.
to say that.
The arts culture in Chicago and the grassroots advocacy of the arts organizations in Chicago is so charitable and accepting and supportive, and it is not like that everywhere.
Right.
I don't think anyone can take credit for this. It's just somehow we really got lucky with the personality of the arts culture we have here in Chicago.
And with the personality that you all had and brought with it and the way they fit together. Now, how did you get going once you got to Chicago? I'm trying to remember how I heard about your first public concerts. I'm
I
not
wonder what we
remembering.
did. I don't even know.
But how did the
Probably
whole
you
thing
see.
go? You had to get a rehearsal space.
Well, so what happened was we did decide to apply to Northwestern to get master's degrees. And now this was very enterprising of us, perhaps. But so at the time, Northwestern had a 1-year master's program. We, because we won this concert artist guild competition, kind of had already, we're doing a fair amount of concertizing. We didn't want to completely give up a whole year of concertizing to do the 1-year masters. So what we proposed to them, they're on a trimester system. So what we proposed to Northwestern was that actually we enroll only in the fall quarter for 3 consecutive years. And we earn our master's degree in that way. And they were totally open to it. And that way we could be in class and sort of do what we needed to do. But then, between January and September, we were sort of free to do our concertizing. And that was really great I don't know who came up with that idea. I can't remember now. But it worked.
It was a really positive conversation with the administration.
Yeah, with the dean at the time.
That was a big lesson about all of these formidable institutions, which is that if you walk in and you're not saying, give us blank or whatever, but you say, I have this interesting idea, then they're willing to have a conversation.
Right.
Figuring out how to apply for and attend Northwestern as a master's student was very much a conversation, and it's wonderful how I don't know, the administration at Northwestern at that time, I think it's turned over a lot since then, but was very happy to have that relaxed conversation. Cincinnati was the same way too, University of Cincinnati. And in both of those ways, those institutions, they really were a couple of our most significant patrons.
They were. And the University of Chicago sort of got wind that we were coming to their town, and they said,
Which does not have a conservatory program.
Right.
So
No, they don't have
it's a complementary.
Right.
It's really academic.
academic program, and they have a lot of talented, science and math majors that play instruments,
Sure.
But they don't have a
Oh,
program.
in the music department, ethnomusicology, and
Yeah,
music
no, of
history,
course,
and
right,
the
but not a
composition, of
performance
course.
degree.
Right.
So they asked us, did we want to sort of be ensemble in residence at University of Chicago with the Pacifica Quartet that had already been there.
Also Oberlin. for instance.
Also who have Oberlin, right, connections. And they said, you'd be responsible for playing pieces by our graduate composers. They write these dissertation works, we'll present them, you play them. So I think that those were some of our first public performances in Chicago when we moved here, doing those composer concerts for University of Chicago, and then also just the recitals that were kind of a part of our master's program at Northwestern. So that was probably some of the first performing that we did here in our city.
And how about recording? That happened pretty early too.
It did. When did we start work? We record with Sadie Records, run by Jim Ginsberg, based here in Chicago, and it's also an extraordinary institution. I think people don't understand this, how remarkable it is. Most record deals are just loans from banks. So when you hear about Mariah Carey getting a $20 million record deal, you think, wow, that's a lot of money for Mariah Carey. But actually she says, yeah, give me all that money. But then she owes all that money back whether or not she sells any CDs. And so then you see major artists going into bankruptcy because there's, recording projects haven't worked out that well. And that's the reality. That's what a recording, a record deal really is usually about. And Jim Ginsberg runs a not-for-profit. And he pays his artists to record and pays recording costs and makes it possible for us to put out records without incurring extraordinary amounts of debt. And we just have never encountered an organization quite like that.
But actually, the recording with Sadie was a little bit of a happy accident in that we had built up a lot of repertoire sort of over a short amount of time, and it amounted to, I think, about 3 CDs worth of music, but we hadn't really yet recorded any of it. So we said, okay, look, we just have to record this. And we decided to enlist Judy Sherman to produce it.
A major producer, multiple Grammy winner, who focuses on contemporary music, but she's done the whole range of classical music.
And so
she's not in Chicago.
Right, she's not in Chicago, but we had decided we wanted to record with Judy. We decided we were doing it. We did actually the first CD at SUNY Purchase out in White Plains, New York, partly because they just had a really great setup and beautiful sounding hall, great piano. And so we'd set up this whole recording project to record for, I think, 3 or 4 days, about 2.5 CDs worth of music.
We recorded some of that music at Northwestern Pickstager as well.
That's true, we did.
To wrap up those CDs.
To wrap it up. But basically, Jim Ginsberg, who runs Sadie, came to some concert that we did and introduced himself and asked what plans we had to record. And I think I remember saying, oh, actually, we're doing this whole project like next month. We've enlisted Judy Sherman. We're going to record 3 CDs. And he said, well, what's all the repertoire? Send it to me. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, I sent him recordings that we had from live concerts that we'd done. And he basically said, I'd like to, have these be released on Sadie. And actually, us working with Judy Sherman also then, and Jim loved working with her so much that now she produces many of Sadie's CDs, and that was, so it was all this kind of, you just never know how things are going to play out.
That also probably all explains or helps to explain why Jim's Sadie Records remains the only Chicago-based not-for-profit label devoted to Chicago artists that is run by the son of one of the great sitting justices of the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Another one has not yet emerged.
No, I don't know. It's true. It's true.
So
it's
you
strange.
went with the right,
It's
you
strange,
put the
though.
money down on the right horse.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
The group started with 6. You got along musically and you got along personally, but as it was not necessarily something that you had signed away all of your life to, people have changes in their lives or changes in their interests or priorities.
Sure.
And you killed two people. How did you deal with departures, and how did you deal with replacing departures? Because you all had been through the round tool nut.
They have so many.
They had not.
By the time our first founding member left, Molly Barth, our flutist, we had all been working together for 10 years. So you grow very, very close. We're approaching, this is the 19th year of the ensemble, we're approaching our 20th season, and in 20 years, we've had so far 6 members, right? Mm-hmm. So only 2 departures, so that's pretty, what do you call it when someone stays at a job?
Consistent.
Sure, that. But sure, after 10 years, actually, and it's important to point that we didn't sign on for life. I think that going back to deciding to try to go to graduate school together when we were undergraduates, we didn't saddle ourselves with that burden of this is what we're deciding to do for the rest of our lives. We really just agreed to try it out for a couple of years. And that made it, I think, comprehensible to us as young people to try it for a while without feeling like we were deciding the rest of our lives all in that one breakfast at that diner, you know. But the way these things happen is without really paying attention or realizing it. One project leads to another, an opportunity and another thing, and something gets booked the next year after that. And you don't really notice until someone points it out to you that 10 years have passed.
Right.
It's something you realize after the fact. And Molly had got married, and we were traveling a lot. Our travel schedule is unpredictable from season to season. It fluctuates wildly, but we've been, I think, gone as much as 200 days a year traveling. Mm-hmm. So it can be pretty heavy travel schedule. And for Molly and her husband, and they're doing some family planning, and her husband thinking about what he would like to do, and what they're going to do with their lives together. I think people they just needed to do what was right for them, mm-hmm. But it's hardly a tragedy. She committed 10 years to doing something at a really high caliber. That's only a success.
And I think it was just time for her to have the next chapter. Yeah. And the same thing happened, with Matt Albert, who was our founding violinist, and he left after 15 years. Right. And the same, both were totally amicable departures, and I think, also probably hard decisions to make for them as well. It's like leaving a family, but also, brave, because, it's like, well, you just want to go on and do something different. Right. And, part of the amazing part of playing in Eighth Blackbird that I think it affords you opportunities even just individually because of what the group has sort of achieved. So,
but however amicable, and they were, as you say, you then got to put new people in.
Oh, right. So I was going to say that and it's as you say, you ask somebody to join this thing that's been going from the beginning, and it's a very weird job, really. And yes, it's about how well you play your instrument, but it's also about like how well our personalities kind of mesh. And so one of the things we've done, at least in the 2 prior auditions when we've held them, is to have the applicant tell us a dirty joke. And you'd be surprised at how much you learn from something like that.
It's true.
Yeah, so, right.
We won't be asking you to give examples.
We won't do that.
Yeah.
But you found people who fit personality-wise.
We really did.
And you didn't have the problem that some groups, I think string quartets probably being the most intense, where they will bring somebody in after a long search, and the next season they'll have to bring in somebody else after a long search. Things have worked out for you all with Tim Monroe, not Tim Weiss, and
Yvonne Lamb. Yes, it's been very lucky.
Tell us about Richmond, Virginia. That was not on your original map.
No, that was another landmark moment for the ensemble. We were lucky to move to Chicago. We had a horrible studio we were renting on Chicago, what is now an empty lot at Chicago and Maine in Evanston. But at that time, it was a first floor storefront that had no heat.
Oh, and, I forgot about the no heat.
Yeah,
factor.
that was. It was.
You have an optimistic memory.
I do, yes, clearly.
Where were we going? What
No,
was
we
it?
were, you're talking about University of Richmond.
Virginia,
Right.
no heat.
So we were doing well with our relationships with the Chicago institutions. Working for the University of Chicago was wonderful, but financial solvency was still something we were reaching for. And one of one of our very lucky concerts that we were asked to do was at the University of Richmond at the Maudlin Center for the Arts, which at that time was run by a woman named Kathy Panoff. And I don't know how we came across Kathy's radar. It might have been there's conferences where you can perform on showcases for presenters, but Kathy has always been an advocate for young talent, and she likes to give young people opportunities. So she brought us in. And then 2 or 3 years after that experience playing at the Maudlin Center at the University of Richmond, the University of Richmond had a string quartet in residence at the time, and that position opened up. And it was Kathy who went to the Department of Music faculty and said, I really would like to ask you to consider Eighth Blackbird rather than another string quartet. And the value pedagogically for the university is that as a multi-instrumental ensemble, rather than come in and maybe only teach strings, we can come in and break out and address a lot more students who are taking lessons and doing things in classrooms and so forth. And so we went and we visited the school and we auditioned, and we got along well. And we got that job, and that was...
And what is the title of the job? And
Yes.
what's the current rough breakdown Chicago-Richmond touring?
Okay. Well, we are... Eighth Blackbird is the ensemble in residence at the University of Richmond. We are also the ensemble in residence at the University of Chicago and at the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. And the interesting thing about that position is that ensemble in residence it means whatever the institution needs it to mean. And they are all three wildly different jobs. At the University of Chicago, the ensemble is the pool of freelancers for the composers. That's really the job. And Contempo, the University of Chicago's new music series. So they're really just players, hired guns. At the University of Richmond, we go in and they have a wonderful music department. It's not a conservatory program. They're, for the most part, not training students who are aspiring to become professional musicians. And so our job there really is arts advocacy. We do special projects with the students. We assist with all of the students that are enrolled in the department's curriculum of private lessons or chamber music ensemble, orchestra, and band, and so forth. And at the Curtis Institute, that is a high-caliber conservatory training environment, and we go in as an ensemble that's teaching, trying to help transition students into the professional world and do lessons and mostly chamber music coachings in that context.
So that breaks down sort of currently 6 weeks of residency at the University of Richmond,
Yes.
4 at Curtis, and then about an additional 12 weeks of touring on top of that, which ends up amounting to about what Matthew said is half the year sort of on the road.
Remarkable. We have a choice here. We can take 2 questions, or we can hear Lisa and Matthew play the piece again. Do you all have a preference?
Hey again.
Play. They've heard enough.
Great.
I want to thank very much Matthew Duvall and Lisa Kaplan for sharing a part of their journey. We didn't get to the future, but you have many opportunities to catch up with them on the future. Visiting their website, you'll find out about all of their concerts and recordings, and you may even find out why they're called Eighth Blackbird.
Oh, right, we never answered
That's
that.
okay, we'll keep it a mystery. But you can find it pretty easily. It's the other thing that will come up when you type Eighth Blackbird, probably. I'll give you a hint, Wallace Stevens.
Oh, that's right.
And let's have them take the piano again. And thank you again so much for coming to this event.
Thanks so much. Thanks. We rarely get to play things for twice, so people can hear it again. This is kind of nice.